And the weird thing is, right, because our relationship to the body as a plural system is very weird. I'm lacking words here right now. It's like
Uh-huh.
it's so paradoxical.
Oh, absolutely. We're finding so many system things are paradoxical in that way. The more we think about them from a plural perspective, the less they make sense from a singular one, but the more real they feel. So, yeah. Happy time
Happy
zone,
time zone,
every
every
many
many
and
and
everybody.
everybody. Awesome. Yeah, welcome back to Plural Conversations at Housemates for Life. This is Matt from the Voices of Jarvis.
Oh, and we are the unfiltered universe, and that's whose fronting is going to change momentarily. So,
All right. Today we thought we'd talk about embodiments because we haven't talked enough about selves-concepts and the interface between internal and external reality. So let's talk about the body today.
just gonna say we find consciousness at bottomless well, so we will always be able to dip back in.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we will talk a bit about how we, as plural systems, how we relate to our body, what it means to us in our daily life. Talk about a bit about some personal experiences and, well, how do we deal with the body? What is our existence? How do we I don't know, I don't want to say cope with our existence, but maybe kind of quote unquote cope with our existence within a physical body.
Rather than cope so much, it's like, how do we talk about it? How do we explain it? Because living it and doing it are so much easier than finding words and communicating across the cultural space versus just the physical plane. Like we could talk about, how to move and how to be, but it's really hard to talk about how that feels and our orientation within that. So,
Yeah. So we hope you enjoy this topic, enjoy this episode, and if you like it, please support us. Leave a like, comment. We really love your comments, and yeah, thank you for switching in and listening.
yay! So in this episode, we are going to deep dive into kind of relationships between consciousness and embodiment and kind of deep headspace inner world stuff on our side, especially. And if any of that is known triggers for you all, our dear listeners, please do take care of yourself. Anytime, I know that we find new triggers all the time. So if you find yourself getting depersonalized, derealized, any of those things, please take care of yourself. Go ahead and stop the episode. If these concepts are not places that you're ready to go, or even that you don't want to go, then don't go there. Take control of your life in this little way. Absolutely empower yourselves. We support you in this. And thank you for trying.
Yes.
Because we hope you love you guys. We hope you love you yourselves enough that you will do that. What we have to say is not anywhere near as important as your mental health and your relationship with your system and your body. So protect your peace and just let us have our fun over here. No big deal. We're not doing it at you. We promise.
Indeed, we're nodding. So, yeah, I briefly mentioned it before. This episode will be kind of a, I don't know, a bridge between our previous episodes on selves-concepts and the realms of reality, because the body is kind of the connection between the internal and the external realm, so to speak. If you haven't, check out those episodes if you like, or just start here and then go back, whatever you prefer. Um, yeah. And yeah, I already mentioned it, the body as a window between two realms. Would you like to start telling us a bit about that?
Oh, sure. Um, so when we were just initially trying to talk about embodiment between our two systems, it's it ended up getting really deep and really convoluted really fast. And we among us the members of the Unfiltered Universe system. We're really had a kind of hot debate sort of about where does that line go? Who needs embodiment, because and what do we need it for? Um, so let's see, my note here is we all accept that our current understanding of consciousness is all tied to embodiment somehow. And all members of the UU, whether or not we ever want to front, know that our ability to be in our system at all is connected through this window, the vessel, the body, as an access to the physical realm. And we're not sure what the relationship between consciousness and our selves-concepts in consciousness, whatever that means, has to do with being in the physical realm. Because some of my headmates do not care about most physical realm stuff. They don't care about embodiment. They don't, but they're still here. So, brought up a lot of questions. And while um, we're not hung up on the answers, we're just fascinated by the questions at this point. It's like, what does embodiment mean? Why do we need it? Do we exist without it? Are all questions that came up for especially our non-physical headmates. So it's kind of Quagmire City.
Yeah, so what kind of, I don't know, sparked inside us when you were talking about this is that we all have to like agree or understand or accept that we are kind of like connected through the body in what way ever, but in essence it's often just not just, but it boils down to the body. And this is not true for every plural system. Like we know about gateway systems and walk-ins, but in our case, we are a closed system, and none of us really leaves the body ever. Not that we know. Nobody just enters the body in that sense. It doesn't feel like that to us. So in our system, at least, we all have to like agree or understand that this is how we are connected. And the weird thing is, right, because our relationship to the body as a plural system is very weird. I'm lacking words here right now. It's like
Uh-huh.
it's so paradoxical because on one hand, as you said, like who needs a body, right? Who needs a physical body when we also exist in mind, in consciousness, whatever. And at the same time, it is kind of very, very important to us, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's that we're acknowledging to ourselves that, there may be different types of relationships to consciousness slash embodiment, that then we have decided suit us. And we wanted to note that right now. Because it's like if we ever speak in absolutes, we're talking in absolutes for our system, not for possibilities for, I'm going to use the broader term people, and that embodies, I include headmates, um, and physical bodies, singlets, and all kind of, everyone with a consciousness who would talk about themselves from any sort of singular perspective as a person. Okay, just for this conversation, for ease of not having to try and find another word to include everyone. Is that all right if we use that term for people right now?
I guess, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because it gets too complicated in our system, even otherwise. But when you bring up like the possibilities of gateway systems, and we were imagining that they have a very different relationship with attuning to the physical realm attachment through the body than we do, and we have a funny feeling that that is a safety measure for ourselves. So, we don't want to change that, but the fact that we don't want to change that doesn't make other people's relationship to that kind of attunement bad or wrong or anything. It's just not our preference or our need. And I wanted
Yeah.
to state that very clearly. Because we're not going to talk from any sort of experience about that. In fact, that might be kind of one of those places we can't look kind of thing, a place we can't go. It's not that it's wrong to go there, but it might be dangerous for us to do so. So I want to put that out there. So when we put those content warnings at the beginning of these episodes, we do it because we have very specific needs ourselves that sometimes we don't understand until we're confronted with them. So
Fair enough.
we want to leave space for other people being supported in that, because I didn't have anybody supporting us when we first started diving off the deep end and thinking about consciousness, and we're like, oh, there's some places that just are not good for us to go. Good to know. But the recovery time's a lot shorter if we notice right away and if we're empowered to do something about it. So anyway, sorry to sidetrack there.
No worries. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that point, like the importance of embodiment, or should we just move on to another point?
Well, because we do as much as we have a physical life that's very important to us. We have life kids that are very important to us. We have no interest in joining the matrix, becoming part of a life that is no longer physical, because we do have investment in the physical realm that we care very deeply for as a larger system. Like, individuals will have different relationships with the physicality and with the relationships in the physical body and all that, sure, but they recognize how important that stuff is to their other headmates and how much supporting their happiness and embodiment benefits the entire system. So, there is those kind of layers going on here. So so we would just wanted to state that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, for us personally, it was a wild experience for us when we discovered our system, because before it was for us, it's like, yeah, this is just a body, and we will talk a bit more deeply about that later, but just now briefly, as a little teaser. So to us, before discovery, we never really cared so much about our body. I mean, it's like we weren't so neglectful about it. Like, we cared about our health and stuff, but not as much as we do now. And that's like kind of weird for us to discover our plurality, discover our disconnect basically from the body, like discovering that we in fact feel very often very disconnected from the body itself. We don't really feel embodied or grounded in that sense. I'm not sure how to call it or how to explain it, because we don't really, I don't know how to experience it's weird. We have a weird relationship with our body, and we realized that even more so when we discovered our system, and especially like hearing singular people talking about their experience with body and embodiment. We're like, what? And then so becoming more aware about the disconnect with our body kind of helped us to actually enhance our connection to our body. It's kind of paradoxical, but that's kind of how it happened to us.
We're finding so many system things are paradoxical in that way.
Oh, yeah.
The more we think about them from a plural perspective, the less they make sense from a singular one, but the more real they feel. So, yeah.
And yet to us, like, the body became sort of its own entity, like in many, many different ways. Like, on one hand, it's our single zona, right? It's what people perceive from the outside immediately, and that's what we present most of the time to outside people. The way we dress, the way we use this body basically makes up our singular identity, our body identity in that sense. It's our body who has an ID card. we as system members, we don't have ID cards. But yeah, we kind of started treating our body more and more as a member of the system, and this is quite recently. I mean, it was a long, slow process, but recently, like, more consciously, we say our body is a system member, and we try to, like, acknowledge the body like a system member, although they're not very talkative. The body doesn't speak to us in the same way we can talk to each other. And I mean, there are other headmates in our system that don't really speak in that sense either. They more like communicate through feelings and other ways of thought talk. But the body has a very specific language, and I'm not just talking about body language as you talk to other beings outside of yourself, but it's like it's giving us signals which we weren't really aware of before discovery. And then discovery, and then we started to actually listen to our body. And it's actually, yeah, quite communicative. We just needed to start to learn the language. But we will talk about that later in this episode. I think I got a bit carried away here, but
we're having a great time listening too, so don't worry.
Amazing.
We're sure the audience will be fascinated.
Everybody's fascinating when I'm talking.
How could we not be? How could we not?
But that's exactly why I will step away for a moment right now. Because my headmate Yuri wanted to talk about a slightly different point regarding, like, body, our relationship with the body, and the body as a plural system itself, basically. So I will let her switch in now, so that may take some time.
Okay, well, we'll use that bit of time to express how excited we are to talk to Yuri, because we don't get to do that very often, so... Hope that doesn't bother them.
Actually, okay. Actually, you do talk a lot to me. Hi. Or rather, I talk a lot to you guys. It's just more like from the backseat. Like,
Sure.
I'm very often passive influence to my headmates. And I'm just, like, when we get to certain topics, I just start to take over without any of us noticing. We only really often notice in hindsight, and then be like, oh, I guess that was Yuri coming in, being very passionate and just talking away.
Fair enough.
Without any notice in advance.
Well, okay, so I'm just going to celebrate you being announced, okay? Is that good enough?
Yeah, for this episode. Because we took some time, right, to prepare, taking some notes. And so I'm talking a bit about the body itself, not so much our relationship to the body, but the body itself, because and this is mostly from a biological perspective and very philosophical perspective, but that's like something that I just feel very passionate about. I could talk about forever. That's why I wanted to do that here in the podcast as well. And to me personally, and I think my headmates also agree with that, is that the body is like a plural system in itself. And I'm just really just thinking about it in a biological sense. Just the fact that the body is a multicellular organism, right? Like, we have all these cells that make up this body and this organism, cooperating with each other, sometimes getting in each other's way, but mostly like cooperating and forming this unit that we usually call the body or organism. But in essence, it's a lot of individuals. And here's the thing, in biology, people don't really have a clear definition of what is an individual. It really depends on what level you look at.
Oh, so true.
Like, even a cell itself, even a cell itself is made up of multiple components that somehow work together. Sometimes in certain areas of biology, like depending on what layer you look at, even a single individual gene is considered an individual and is what propagates from generation to generation, even though it is connected to other genes on the genetic code of a single organism, right? So it gets complex, it gets complicated, it gets really mindfuckery the more you think about it.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then even beyond that, like we have, like, our body is not isolated. Our body is very tightly connected to our own individual microbiome in our guts, in our skin, everywhere. Our body is like communicating, collaborating with other individuals and organisms, and that's just the body. And then take outside the body, beyond the body, the ecosystem that we live in. To us, it's like there's no isolation point between that, right? We're like, it's like a fluid transition between what constitutes us or our body and everything around us. There's this influence back and forth, and that, that only on the physical level, but also on the mental level. So it's really, really difficult for us to think of the body as a singular entity. It's so difficult for me, especially. It's so difficult. Like, I can literally feel the blurry flow between what is me and us and the outside, and I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, for us, it's we recognize that some of my headmates will absolutely relate to everything you're talking about on the biological level. Me, who's good with words, not great with that kind of conceptual thinking. But I do know that I don't think you mentioned like the digestion system being literally kind of its own kind of system within inside the body that's kind of alien to the body. Like, it can't live outside. We need it, it needs us, that kind of thing. And if you want to talk more about that, we'll love that. But first, we want to quick mention that, in us ourselves, in the ways that some of my headmates front, is they will front with a specific job physically. Like, one eye. They're responsible for paying attention to the information coming in one eye versus the other eye versus, each arm and each leg, divided into like six, possibly more, kind of things, where they'd be in teams of headmates that work together to do those things. And so, thinking about how, like, we have trouble thinking about someone fronting and taking over the whole body at once, no less just what it would be like to only be one entity in this body. So,
Yeah. And yeah, so I think, trying to make a point here, I think the point that we wanted to make is that, like, we find it difficult to think of, first of all, of our system as a singular being. And then, but even the body for us, it's difficult to think of a singular unit. And so we can do that for pragmatic purposes, the purpose that we live in a society. And there are things like administrative stuff and legal stuff, where in some regard we can see the benefit of thinking of one body as one entity, one ID card. It would be a bit difficult if we all got our own ID cards, to be fair. It would be cool, but also difficult. So there is a benefit to, depending on what what level you look at it, to see the body as a unit, as a one singular being. But to us, it's always a lie. We are always lying when we do that. It's always a mask. It's always a singular sonar, and we're okay with that if it's treated like that. If if this lie was treated as a lie rather than as the truth, the ultimate truth, or
Yes. A shared conceptual agreement.
yeah, exactly. Which unfortunately is not always the case, or is like, that's why I think that's why plural systems struggle so much with being acknowledged as such, because it's so ingrained in us, in our society, that the body is a singular identity, a singular unit, a singular being, and then trying to break free from that, trying to explain wait, stop, we're actually multiple here. You just can't see it.
Yep. And well stated. We were just smiling and nodding through that whole thing. Just
Okay, I think I'm done here, and I will leave the stage back to Matt, because he's better at moderating and like leading on this recording.
sure. Thank you so much for stopping by, Yuri. I'm so glad you were up front and got to talk to us directly.
Sure thing. That's like when I switch in, like Matt, after Yori, I try to convey her words to you. So
Welcome back.
thanks.
I know you weren't far, but still.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Yuri, for your contribution. um and we will talk a bit more about the impact of being embodied as a plural system, and like being embodied as a plural system in a society. We will talk about that later, and potentially, looking at the time, probably in the next part of this episode. But let's get back a bit more conceptually, like what it means to be embodied as an entity, as a being, because that's kind of how we feel. I'm not sure how all plural systems feel. I don't know how all plural systems feel about this part, but for us specifically, we don't really feel like we are human in that sense. Like, so I mean, we understand we are in a human body. We belong to the species Homo sapiens, and also most of us, at least those who are mostly engaged at the front, have internally a human form. If we want to, we can imagine ourselves as animals or whatever, but we don't really have that experience of being not sure what's the correct term, otherkin or alter human. That's also a possibility, and very common, not only for plural systems, but very common experience for plural systems, to have at least one system member who's definitely non-human. But that's not what I mean. I mean,
So common.
yeah, it's not really what I mean, but we will talk about that also in a bit. But what I really mean is, like, I personally, for example, like Matt talking, I just feel like I'm part of this human, but I'm not this human, and I don't know. I have very often this feeling that I'm not really a human. That I struggle so much to relate to other human beings. I feel more like a car driver, and especially when I'm alone out at front, I don't feel like this is my body really strongly. I feel like I'm literally like I'm a driver. Literally, like in that film Inside Out, it feels like we are little gnomes sitting inside a machine, a big mecha suit, and like, pulling some switches
Mm-hmm.
to move this body. I mean, it's not exactly like that, but
Oh yeah.
just from a conceptual point,
Or a bridge on the ship.
yeah, I identify way much more with little gnomes steering a mecha suit than with a human person, with a human.
Or as the joke goes, 3 raccoons in the trench coat. Um, or more.
Yeah, so, and that's weird. That's just it's like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's interesting that a human society that feels like it's like singularity, being a singlet is the only thing you're allowed to be, readily identifies and finds, peace in um, stuff that is so plural coded, like the raccoons in the trench coat, like the gnomes driving the body, like, it's like, oh, I think there's a lot more room for plurality culture in just regular humanness than people understand, was something we were thinking of while you were talking.
Oh yeah, 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 sure. That's always the weirdest part. It's like when singular people are so how do you say, insistent? No,
Yes.
like so insist on being a singular being, but then using all that kind of metaphor shit. That to me is like, yeah, well, you're talking totally about plural stuff. Whoa, how does that work together? I don't know. I don't understand.
And I think it's just not being aware of the possibilities. Like how much plural stuff did you include in your internal narrative before you discovered plurality was a thing outside of yourself? I know we didn't. We had to be exposed to those concepts before we could have our discovery, in a way. Um, but it didn't create our system. Our system was there waiting to find conceptual language to talk to be able to make the way that they talked align with the way that embodied fronters do, kind of, in a way, and finding that language created the ability to communicate. And it didn't create anything else. It just created pathways for communication. And it's weird to see some of that get vilified as it does in the world. I don't know. But to circle back to the not feeling human, well, when humanity is presented to you as singlet only, one mind, one body, and even that oneness is created to, connected in a lot of spiritualities, traditions, or whatever, to we are all alike, we are all the same, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I relate to any of that. And if that's what being human is, I don't think we're human. I think we're playing human the best we can. And it feels like I don't know if you saw the Lego movie, but it feels like the kitty unicorn or whatever trying to make it in the business thing, holding the briefcase going business business. It's like I, it's like a toddler telling jokes they don't understand. They know how to get the laugh, but they don't have any idea what they're doing, right? It's like that's how we feel trying to be human in the broader context a lot of the time. It's like we can hold it together enough that, like, quote unquote, everyone's fooled, or like it works well enough. We have jerry rigged enough of a collective personality that we can pretend to all be the same person all the time. But that was our reality for literally decades. So we had no idea of the gaps, of the missing pieces, even though sometimes they were, very apparent to people on the outside. Just, but at the same time, it's like however strict somebody's definition of human is, the less we feel like we fit into it. Just period.
Mm.
So
it's also like for me specifically, it's like I feel like I have a completely different skill set in a way than quote unquote singular humans. I don't think humans are actually singular beings, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah, I do.
but I feel like just the fact that we are a plural system, that we can dissociate from certain experiences, be it physically or emotionally, um, puts us in a different position. I'm not saying anything about being better or worse or whatever, just different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be beneficial, sometimes it can be impairing. It's not a one way thing, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
But just the fact that we have that certain, I will just call it skill set, or I don't know, predisposition or presetting. Let's call it presetting. Um, makes me as an individual hatmate, makes me very different from singular humans in a way. It's like for example, I'm very strongly disconnected or disconnected from um, most of our negative emotions. I can feel them, but I can never really feel them as my own. So
Right.
for me, it's very easy to be like the ever happy person, you know, because I don't really have that full human experience in that sense. Um, only indirectly through my system. Uh, And so when I compare myself, I shouldn't, and I usually don't do that, but when I compare myself to other humans, uh, it just doesn't fit. I just can't really see myself outside reflected in that way. Uh, only in other hatmates are similar to me, you know, who have a similar presetting as I do. So it's really like, I don't know, as if we are different species in a way. I don't know. It definitely sometimes feels to me like that. Like I'm not really, um, I'm not really, I don't know. I'm not really a human being in that sense.
It kind of feels like so non-biological subspecies, right? So it's like it's more of a con uh, gosh, I can't even, the words fail. They just really do because they're so fit. The language that we're forced to use is based on making sounds with our mouth that echo through a physical reality, right? Um, and some of the experiences that we have as headmates defy that a lot. We navigate a landscape that includes a lot of other things before we even contemplate how to express outside of the body to someone who doesn't share it with us. And that's at some point you got to think about. It's like, yeah, I've never, where does the word human fit in all of those kind of things? If humanity doesn't accept me, then it's not me deciding I'm not human. We just decided that right now as we said it. It's like, it's not that I'm not trying to be human, it's that I'm trying to be myself, and I find more and more that doesn't fit the definition of how other people see their humanity and how they express their humanity and all that. It's like when humanity includes polyfragmented plurals, then sure, I will have an easier time identifying as human. But until then, it's like, yeah, I am responsible for a human life and a human body, in part because I'm only part, but I definitely invest in and recognize the responsibility held by our system as a whole, you know, but it's in some ways more akin to, oh, I won't delve that deep, but it's like, we were gonna say something about the fact that, we relate to it like we relate to our country, but no, I take a lot more personal responsibility for how my system behaves as an embodied entity than my country seems to take. or that I am responsible. Our body embodiment, our system is not responsible at all for what our country does. So I'm not gonna even gonna go there. But it was like an interesting kind of parallel to think about, and then go, nah.
Fair enough.
And then from there, from the recognizing that, as a whole, even our um, headmates that are comfortable fronting and living life in a human body and doing human things really feel this distance from the concept of being accepted as a human being. I find it much easier to be accepted as a person than to think I'm accepted as a human being. Um, I don't know if that resonates at all with you guys, but
Mm-mm, definitely. Like we were reading up on personhood the other day. Totally unrelated, but we were reading about personhood of a company, like a legal personhood of companies.
mm-hmm.
And it's so bizarre to us that people can treat a company, which is not human, but made up of multiple humans. It's not even made up of humans, but it's owned by multiple humans. And it still has legal rights like a human being. It's treated like a human person. Not completely, but in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's just so bizarre for us.
We find that concept so terrifying. So it's like you can extend that for evil, basically, to corporations, but you can't extend it to the plural embodied. It's just, you should. You should be able to do that, and.
I didn't want to open this can of worms, but it just came to
It's
my mind.
okay. It should, though. It really should. Because it's like everybody acts like, I mean, everybody, like popular culture and our exposure to the culture at large. We understand we have limited perspective. So we're speaking from our own perspective. It appears that the culture at large, humanity at large, doesn't have the capacity or the interest in having the capacity. They're disinterested. There we go. In recognizing plurality and accepting plurality, whatever. Yet they do things like that.
Mm.
It's just so frustrating because it's like baloney. Absolutely baloney that you can't understand this, that you don't understand this. You just refuse to extend it.
Or like, I think more like you just don't know. Like, like I think,
Ignorance, yeah.
yeah, it's really not necessarily malicious, but it's just because nobody talks about plurality to that extent as we talk about companies and money and taxes and laws, But to reel back a bit here, because so I think we're definitely gonna do a 2-part episode because we have so much more to say about
Mm-hmm.
human embodiment, plurality, and society. Just for now. So we were before we were talking about being non-human in a human body, and we were talking about it a bit more from the philosophical point of view, but and this is a very common experience, and I know this is a common experience also in your system, of being really non-human or an alter-human being in a human body and having to front, etc., etc. I'm not sure. I don't want to talk for you, so I will just leave the stage for you guys.
Oh, sure. And it's just when we're talking about embodiment, you can't miss out on the whole idea that some of us you can't fit, our human body does not express some of what we are. Like some of us have wings and tails and horns and things and identify. Well, we don't even like the term identify. It's just when we think about the form that we take. And, you know, um, gosh, because it's like, is that what identity is? And, that's a question that other communities that we don't belong to kind of have a corner on, and we want them to keep it. You know what I mean?
Not quite sure. Can you maybe expand a bit on it?
Well, what I mean is we'll expand it just a tiny bit, is that, we want people who really need the identity conversation to exist in their gender conversation, to keep ownership of that. We don't need to reclaim this word to mean this other thing that we're thinking about, because it's like, um let's say we have, um okay, somebody's talking about it's like, we want to mention a specific headmate, but we're not going to mention her name. But we do have a headmate that is a cat in human form who used to go to work for us sometimes. And she's, oh God, no, she's here. Oh, very comfortable. She's just so much more comfortable in the body than the rest of us are, or the majority of the rest of us are. But she does have ears in the wrong place. They're on top of her head like a cat's. And she does have a tail. And when she walks around, we can feel the tail. It moves around and does cat tail things. And, and it's like, how does that fit into our embodiment? It's like we really literally feel like we have a vestigial tail. Now, because that's kind of headmate stuff, fitting an embodiment into a body that doesn't fit, we don't feel bad if we sit on our tail. The tail just phases through the physical stuff that's inconvenient to us, Just because we didn't get it physically, we are not bound by its physicality. We also recognize that our tail is never going to knock anything off a table or anything like that, because it's non-physical, but it definitely gives feedback into our brain about what it's trying to do and what it wants to do. Not to give personhood to her tail, but sometimes it feels like cats' tails really do have their own personhood, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
If you've been a long time cat lover, that's not such a foreign concept, and if cats could speak on these kind of things, I think they might actually say that they have a relationship with their tail, but their tail is its own thing.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like they forget that they have a tail. Like they
Mm-hmm.
suddenly see it and then they attack it as if it was like some bug or whatever.
Right. And so there is all of that. And, it means that we're not the only ones who struggle. I love that the cat got brought up, though, because it's like, there's evidence that human beings are not the only ones who struggle with embodiment,
Oh,
who
absolutely.
misunderstand what their own bodies are and how their own bodies work, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like, I would love that concept gets brought up. So, and as far as body embodiment, including things that just are not physically possible to include. Um, I, I don't know where we're going with this, but we just wanted to make sure we were represented in this conversation, because a huge part of our struggle with embodiment sometimes, or the one that we feel most seen in the plural community for having, are these kind of fronting experiences. Like, our hidden struggles are the deeper ones, where we're going to get into later about just how people who don't even see themselves as physical entities have a hard time conceptually understanding the needs and wants of someone embodied trying to navigate an embodied society. That's like way beyond their pay grade. But, it's like, how do we deal with the fact that some of us are taller than our physical body is? And we feel it. We're like, oh my gosh, I feel cramped inside this body because it's not the size that my embodiment feels like it should be, right? We just don't fit. And it's like, my neck is too short, my limbs are too long, or whatever. And we feel those things so momentarily, though. It's like we barely get a chance to feel it entirely, no less catalog it and write it down, or, try and put a name to what's going on before it switches again. Because, yeah, embodiment with so many doesn't give flexibility in that. At least not right now. And we have a feeling that our system is going to go through a lot of changes in the upcoming years. Um, should we be lucky to live that long, right? Life is so uncertain. We do think of things like that because we want to accept ourselves and our body and our system exactly the way it is, because we know living any further than we have gotten so far is an absolute privilege. And it's interesting to come that far in our personal healing journey that we think about life that way. It's like, while we recognize how many people in my system don't necessarily have personal experience or wants or needs or whatever in the body or in being embodied, but we really do recognize how much we need it. It's that weird thing we were talking about in the beginning. We're like, we don't understand this relationship, but we definitely know it's there, and we definitely value it. We see its value, even as we sit here going, I don't understand this thing, but it definitely exists, and we certainly aren't going to argue with that, because we have so many headmates that we are like told exist that we can't even conceptualize, so they can't speak to us yet. If you're fronting, we're talking to a microphone, we're talking to another system in another country on this big ball we live on, and it's like, what? You want me to understand that, yet also I'm like having trouble remembering that I have arms. So we just wanted to talk about that for a second and give space to our winged brethren and our hooved brethren and people with paws and fins and all those other kinds of things that are interesting that they use to navigate the non-physical space that they exist in most of the time, to then be forced into this human body that has these limitations that it does, and just validate all of those kind of experiences for a second while we have this platform to do so. Not with necessarily with even any point, but it is a really big, interesting piece of how embodiment doesn't fit headmate existence.
Absolutely.
That we wanted to make sure that we tipped our hat to.
I think you made that point really, really well and clearly, in a very artful way also. And actually, this kind of brings me back to the very beginning of this episode. Is like how paradoxical it is, how just trying to wrap this up a bit, this episode. Like how on one hand, how annoying a body is, how limited it is,
Yes.
how inconvenient it is oftentimes, how demanding it is, how needy our bodies are, right? But at the same time, it's so precious, it's so important to our existence. It's, I don't know, it defies words for the feeling that we have when we think about our body too much. It's kind of like having a pet or having a cat. It's like having a cat, Cats are nasty beings, let's just admit it. But we love them, and we want to take care of them, we want to pamper them, It's kind of how we relate to our body,
Yeah.
But yeah, enough about bodies for now. we will move on to a second part to this episode, because we realized that as we were talking, this topic is just too big, It's just a body, but it's just too big. And so in the next episode we will talk a bit more about some personal experiences. I mean, we always talk about our experiences, but a bit more like really lived experiences, some struggles, some difficulties, and how we navigate the fact that we are embodied, and especially embodied as plural systems in a society. But yeah, we'll see you, hear us in the next episode.
Thanks for coming along.
Yes. So yeah, this was part 1 of Embodiment, plural conversations on embodiment at the Housemates for Life podcast. I'm Matt. I was here with my handmate Yuri from the Voices of Jarvis.
And we are too many to count in the unfiltered universe.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye. I was waving while I was saying goodbye.
Me too! Oh, that's definitely going on the blooper reel.
Yes. Silly bodies doing silly things.
Yeah, it's like waving to microphones. Oh. Embodiment's so confusing. Clap, clap, clap.
Hello, test. Whoop, whoop. Hello. It's me, Mattis.
Clap, clap, clap.
I'm currently sorting my thoughts.
Right. Clap, clap, clap.
I think Yuri wanted to talk about that because she feels very passionate about the biology stuff.
Oh, fantastic.
So I will let her switch in and talk and kind of babble about that. And then we can
okay.
See how it goes.
We'll try and leash it then. Yeah, let you guys go.
Thanks.
Clap, clap, clap. Okay. That's fine. It's just we wanted to make your point was so not covered.
Yeah.
In anything that we've been exposed to, that we felt it was important to make sure that that's included in a very featured way. So no qualms about that. It's just I have some clamoring non-human headmates that are like, we thought we got a turn. I guess.
Yeah.
You will. I don't know what you want to say, but you will get a turn. We're working on it. Okay. Clap, clap, clap.
So I would just move on if that's okay for you, or
yeah, that's fine. And I was just thinking about the time ourselves. It's like, so maybe this ends up being a 2-parter. We don't care.
Yeah, how do you feel about making it a 2-parter?
Oh, I don't mind at all. I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot to say about embodiment. So
yeah, it's like either we really cut out certain things, or we really just go wild.
Well, then let's go wild. We're in a groove right now, so